All right, hello everybody. Today we are going to be doing notes on section 1.1 and 1.2 of our textbook, which is all about solving equations. Now all of this should be review from your math class last year, so we're just going to cover it fairly quickly. First thing I want to talk about is this little flow chart here, solving equation steps. So the first thing that we're going to look at, do I have to distribute? So I'm going to look at this example and see, is there any grouping symbols? For example, are there parentheses or brackets that I need to distribute? And there is. This 2 can be distributed to the x minus 1. All right, now moving on in our flowchart onto the next one, do I have to clean up? That basically means, do I have any like terms on the same side together that I can clean up? And I do. I have this 2x and this plus 3x on the same side. I can clean those up before moving on. All right, if we follow the next arrow down here to number 3, do I have variables on both sides? Now the goal is always to get your variables on the same side together. And I always recommend moving your variable first, because that's what's going to end up showing you if you're going to have a special case. So I would move either the 5x over to the left side or move the 6x over to the right side. But you want to get both of your x values on the same side together. Now, if we follow our arrow over here to the left-hand side, I'm going to call this one number 4. This one asks, is the variable isolated, which means, is the variable by itself? Right now, our variable is not by itself over here. This minus 2 is over here with it. And I'm just going to define this. Isolated means by itself. All right, and then we move on down to the last one. I'm going to call this one number 5. Which asks, is the variable multiplied? The answer is yes, it is multiplied by 5. So our last step we're going to need to do is divide both sides by 5 so that we can get that x by itself. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at a couple of examples. Move this down a little bit. All right, so my first example, when I look at this, I see that I do not have any parentheses or brackets, so I will not have any distributing that I need to do. However, I do have some cleaning up that I can do. I have this 9x minus 6x on the same side together. So I can clean this up. So if I rewrite this, my negative 12 stays on the left-hand side, equals 9x minus 6x is 3x, and then we still have that plus 15. All right, now the next thing that we need to do is we want this 3x to be isolated. Right now, it's on the same side with this 15, so we need to get that 15 moved away from it. Now, it doesn't matter if your x value is isolated on the right side or left side of the equals sign. So I'm going to keep it over here on the right-hand side. And I'm going to subtract 15 from both sides. When I do that, these will cancel out over here. So if we have negative 12 and then we subtract 15 more, we know that our answer is going to be negative. Get negative 27 equals, the only thing left on the right side now is the 3x. Now our final step that we need to do now is get the x by itself. So this brings us to our last step. Is the variable multiplied? It is. So to undo that, I'm going to divide both sides by 3. 3 divided by 3 will cancel out. Negative divided by a positive will be a negative number. And 27 divided by 3 is 9. So negative 9 equals x. And just to write this in proper form, I'm going to rewrite that the other way as x equals negative 9. I prefer to highlight my answers, but if you like to box them or circle them, that's fine too. As long as on your homework, it's easy for me to see what your answer is. All right, now if we move on over here to example B, first thing I notice is I have these parentheses. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to distribute this 2 to both of the things that are inside of those parentheses. I'm going to distribute. So when I distribute, I have 2 times 1, which is 2. 2 times negative x, which is negative 2x. Hanging out outside of those parentheses is the positive 3, so that's still going to stay there, equals negative 8. All right, now my next step, if I look at this, my left-hand side of the equals, I have a 2 and I have a 3. I can clean this up. So 2 plus 3 is 5. And then I still have that minus 2x equals negative 8. All right, now the next thing I want to do is isolate the variable. So I want to get this negative 2x by itself over here. So right now we have a positive 5. To get rid of that positive 5, I'm going to subtract it from both sides. So this is to isolate. So all I'm left with on the left side is negative 2x equals negative 8 minus 5. Your answer is still going to be negative, which is 13. All right, now my final step. I need to get this negative 2 away from that x. My x is almost by itself. I've almost solved for it. So this negative 2 is being multiplied by x. So in order to get rid of it, I need to do the inverse, which is dividing. So I'm going to divide both sides by negative 2. So I get x equals, now I have a negative divided by a negative. That will become a positive, which is 13 over 2. Now you could also write that as a decimal instead if you would prefer. So I can write that as or x equals 6.5. That's up to you if you prefer to write it as a fraction or convert it to a decimal. All right, let's go ahead and flip the page. We are going to move on to a word problem. Now, if you need to, you can take a minute, pause so that you can write this down. So let's read through this problem. It tells us the formula D equals 1/2 n plus 26 relates to the nozzle pressure N in pounds per square inch of a fire hose and the maximum horizontal distance the water reaches, D, in feet. How much pressure is needed to reach a fire 50 feet away? All right, now what I really like to do with word problems is draw a picture. So I'm going to use this little empty space up here at the top and I'm going to draw a little picture. So I'm going to say this is my person. They're standing over here. We know that there's a fire. So I'm going to say the fire is over here. That's where our fire is over there. And he needs to shoot the water over there so that he can put out the fire. I'll make it look like he's holding a little nozzle too, so that's attached to something. So this tells us that D is the distance in feet that the water reaches, which means this whole span here, however far our water goes, that is D, our distance. All right. So if we look at this problem again, we have our formula. A little box around this. We have our formula. We know that the nozzle pressure is N. And we know that the distance the water reaches is D. So we know what all of our variables stand for. So what this problem is asking us is how much pressure is needed. Remember, pressure is our N value. How much pressure is needed to reach a fire that is 50 feet away? That's my D value. So in my equation, D equals 1/2 N plus 26. We are being asked to find the value of N when D equals 50. So this is asking us to find N when D equals 50. So what we're going to do is plug in 50 for D and then solve for N. All right, so let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to say 50 equals 1/2 N plus 26. And now I want to get this N by itself. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is subtract 26 from both sides. Cancels out over here. When I do 50 minus 26, that gives me 24 equals 1/2 N. All right, what we need to do now is get rid of this 1/2. So we can do that by multiplying by the reciprocal, multiplying both sides by the reciprocal. So when we do that, the 1/2 and the 2/1 cancel each other out. And over here, this is like saying 2/1 times 24/1. Or in other words, 2 times 24, which is 48. So we know that N equals 48. Oops, that was a little hard to read. Fix with the 8. N equals 48. But this is a word problem, so we need to write what that 48 actually means. So in the context of this problem, this means 48 pounds, I'm going to label that as LBS, 48 pounds per square inch, which is inches squared, 48 pounds per square inch of pressure to reach a fire 50 feet away. And that's my final answer. We can put a box around it, we can circle it, I'm going to highlight it. That is our final answer. So it's really important whenever we have these word problems that when you write your answer, it's written in context of the problem. If we just wrote 48, N equals 48, that could be anything. That could be 48 M&Ms. 48 times that you run around a track. You have no idea what it means unless you write it in context to your problem. All right, so that is it for notes on 1.1 and 1.2, solving equations. Have a good rest of your day.